Article 2, Section 13, 2 years before Election Day. From Jerry Neville to Randolph Sackett. Subject: Hey Randy, you remember me, right? Dear Randy, it's been so long since we've spent time together. I still remember that thing you did back when we were together at Harvard. Don't worry, I won't tell anybody. Anyway, I hope you remember the time I insisted to the people running Josiah Barrage's presidential campaign that you were one of the people they needed to nominate as U.S. Attorney if they were to get my help in the Democratic Party primary. I think it's fair to say you owe me a favor. Today, I need to call in that favor. There's a kid named Jonathan Hall. You probably haven't heard of him yet. If you don't do something about him, you'll definitely hear about him. That would make me very upset. So, please have a look at the video I've enclosed. I've shown you the man, find the crime. Sincerely, Jerry Neville. From Randolph Sackett to Jerry Neville. Subject: Ray. Hey Randy, you remember me, right? Dear Jerry, it's certainly good to hear from you. It's really been too long. I had a look at the videos you've sent. I can find no crime committed by Jonathan Hall. I wish I could help you out. Really, I do. Isn't this Hall kid the same guy that did the video that went viral about the migrant camp in northern Indiana? Because of him, my phone is ringing off the hook with people wanting me to look into the camp. Sorry I couldn't be of more help. Yours, Randy. From Jerry Neville to Randolph Sackett. Subject: Ray. Hey Randy. Randy, I can't help but recall a saying that any prosecutor worth his salt can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. Do you mean to tell me that you're not a prosecutor worth your salt? Rather than risk finding out the answer to that question, I've had the legal department look at the Hall videos for you. You can thank me later. We found a crime you could charge Hall with. Please have a look at 5722 on the first video. Email me back when you realize what the charges should be. Don't worry about your phone ringing off the hook. The public will forget about that soon enough. I'll take care of it the old-fashioned way. I'll put Paul Nicopolis on it. Jerry. From Randolph Sackett to Jerry Neville. Subject: Hey Randy, you remember me, right? Jerry. I think I see what you're talking about, but all I see is a trivial misdemeanor. You want me to charge him with that? Are you serious? Randy. From Jerry Neville to Randolph Sackett. Subject: Hey Randy, you remember me, right? Randy. I'm as serious as a heart attack. You think the fact that the charge is a misdemeanor is a problem? Don't you see? The more minor the crime he's charged with, the better. We want to make sure he knows not to anger us. He has to realize that if he angers us, we could make his life hell, for any reason or no reason. Get it now? If not, think about it. Jerry. From Randolph Sackett to Jerry Neville. CC Maureen Inkelman. Subject: Hey Randy, you remember me, right? Dear Jerry, I think I see what you're getting at. I've got to say it's clever. I'm going to assign this matter to Maureen Inkelman. I've CC'd her on this email chain. You've been a good friend to me. I'll make sure Hall gets the deluxe treatment when he's arrested. Sincerely, Randolph. From Jerry Neville to Randolph Sackett. CC Maureen Inkelman. Subject: Hey Randy, make sure Maureen Inkelman knows that a conviction, any conviction, will be rewarded. Tell her those stories about how generously I repay favors, okay? Yours, Jerry. Article 2, Section 14. Indianapolis State House, 2 years before Election Day. Oh, there you are, Hamilton called out when he spotted her amid the crowd. Mei Hua didn't react. She just continued wandering, seemingly at random, around the ornate marble floor of Indiana's State House rotunda. When he finally reached her, Hamilton stopped to watch her for a moment. She was staring up at the blue stained glass inner dome that surmounted the granite Renaissance Revival columns towering above. With a gleam in his eye, Hamilton studied her awestruck demeanor, her eyes wide, her mouth agape. "Oh, hi," she said when she emerged from her reverie. "I see you made it to our little state house," Hamilton said. "This is where you work?" she enthused. "Yes," Hamilton said, puffing himself up a bit. "I couldn't find my way around," she said, her voice breathy, its pitch high. "I'm glad you were able to find me." "Is this your first time in a city this big?" "Indianapolis is only a little bigger than Boston," said Mei Hua. "They probably don't have cities this big in China, do they?" "Yeah, Shanghai is nothing like this," Mei Hua said, careful not to roll her eyes. Don't worry. With me, you'll get right to where you need to go, Hamilton assured her.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deputy Secretary.
Call me Edwin.
I'll try. That might be difficult for me.
Why ever would that be?
You see, in China, powerful men like you are treated with deference. We call them by their titles.
That won't be necessary. You're in America now. If you want, you could even call me Eddie.
In China, we have a saying. Roughly, it translates to, "That is not how you address the emperor in his palace,"
Mei Hua stated as she eyed her surroundings once again.
"But I thank you. Again you come to save me when I need you."
Well, I'd hate to see your hard work go to waste after you came all this way here from China. Anyway, let me take you upstairs, he said. Hamilton stopped himself before he could clasp Mei Hua by the hand. With a wave, he beckoned her after him as he ambled towards the elevators that served the executive branch offices. The morning rush of state employees now over, the elevators were mostly empty. Mei Hua studied the surroundings. That's just office news. There are no jobs listed there, Hamilton told Mei Hua as he pushed the button to summon the elevator car. Mei Hua didn't see Hamilton's simpering grin. She was busy looking at the bulletin board that hung near the bank of elevators, its cork surface pitted from having absorbed so many pushpins and staples over the years. The board was festooned with papers announcing office programs, promoting inclusivity, fighting racism, and combating sexual harassment. Two of the posted items were identical. Notifications of the upcoming Public Service Recognition Week. Come on, babe. Come on, Mei Hua. The elevator's going to be here soon, he said, pushing the elevator button a second time and then a third. After a bit more waiting, the elevator doors finally parted. Mei Hua got on with Hamilton. The two, finally alone together, shifted on their feet as they stood silently in the elevator. After a moment, Mei Hua turned to Hamilton. Facing him squarely, she looked at him with a grateful gaze.
"I was a bit distracted before," she said. "I can't thank you enough."
Hamilton took both of her hands into his own. "It was my pleasure. Hearing about your trouble paying for school, I knew I could help. So I did."
Mei Hua began, her voice once again breathy and high-pitched.
Hamilton drew his face closer to hers. He seemed to be testing the waters. Before he could attempt anything, the elevator doors opened. Mei Hua followed Hamilton as he exited the elevator and strode down the hallway towards the office. Before he could escort her in, Mei Hua tapped him on the shoulder.
"Is that the Secretary of State's office?"
she asked, pointing. "Yes."
"Can I meet him?"
"You mean Secretary Prentice?"
"Yes."
"He's not there. He seldom is. His job has him out of the office most of the time."
"He must be needed for important business elsewhere," Mei Hua noted.
"Yeah, something like that."
"Do you think I could just see his office?"
"You want to look at it?"
"Yes."
"Okay."
"So this is where your boss works?"
Mei Hua asked, admiring the surroundings as she crossed into the Secretary of State's office. "Yeah," Hamilton muttered, trying not to sound crestfallen. The elegant office was bathed in morning sunlight emanating from the two windows, which afforded a magnificent view of the city. Sitting on the dark blue carpet were two wooden desks, each made of fine walnut. Facing each desk were a pair of chairs, each splendidly upholstered with leather. Even those paying homage to the secretary would sit in comfort. A fireplace, long unused, gave the room a homey feel, which was heightened by the sofa and the overstuffed chairs that surrounded it. The walls were decorated with landscapes of the Indiana countryside and with portraits of previous secretaries of state. Mei Hua gazed around the room in wonder.
"It's like a museum,"
she said. Hamilton forced himself to chuckle a bit. "Yeah, I guess you could say that." Mei Hua proceeded to examine the portraits on the walls.
"So these are his illustrious predecessors?"
she remarked. "Not all of them were so illustrious. I could tell you some stories. Maybe another time."
"Maybe,"
Mei Hua repeated. She kept looking around the office. "Did you come here for a job, or did you come here to look at portraits? Come on, let's go to my office."
"You can still help me, can't you?"
"Yes."
"Then let's go,"
she replied. With that, Hamilton stepped out of the office. Noticing he was alone, he turned back to see Mei Hua still admiring Secretary Prentice's workplace. "It's this way," Hamilton insisted.
"Oh, yes, right." Let's go, Mei Hua said as she followed Hamilton the short distance to his own office.
This is my office, said Hamilton as he led Mei Hua in. It was far smaller than the secretary's office. The desk, a hand-me-down given to the deputy secretary's office when the state treasurer redecorated, was scuffed and pitted from decades of use. The paintings decorating the walls were somewhat smaller than the paintings in the larger office. One of them was a poster, hastily framed. Hamilton noticed Mei Hua's shoulders droop when he saw her surroundings.
Where are your predecessors?
She asked, evidently noticing no portraits on the walls. Come, look at the view, Hamilton suggested, pointing out of the room's one window. It offered much the same view as the secretary's pair of windows. After Mei Hua glanced out the window, Hamilton sat down at his desk to consult his computer. Mei Hua took the seat opposite. Let's see what we can get for you, Hamilton mumbled, as Mei Hua waited in silence, sitting very still. Hamilton searched around the state's postings for a job opening that Mei Hua could fill. Okay, yeah, I think we can, Hamilton stammered to himself as he poked about the listings. Mei Hua continued to sit in silence. Hamilton glanced over at her, hoping she would say something or at least move. She remained still. Hamilton continued mumbling to himself so his voice would fill the dead air with a bit of sound. Okay, here we go. Now we're talking. Rhonda Vermillion is looking for an executive assistant, Hamilton said.
Who's that?
She works for the state treasurer. Mei Hua stared at Hamilton, her face blank, her eyes blinking. I guess you need something at the Secretary of State's office, huh? Hamilton mused, almost to himself. Here in this branch, let's see. Axel LeMay needs a secretary? Hamilton looked over at Mei Hua again. She didn't react. Well? He asked.
Harvard's not going to give me credit for a menial job like that,
blurted a frowning Mei Hua.
I might as well work at Horvath's and serve cinnamon buns to shoppers at the mall.
She put her hands to the armrest of her chair as if to stand up. Just wait. Let me have a look at what I can get you at a higher level.
Fine,
said Mei Hua, drumming her fingers on the armrest. Oh, here's one. Organization and vendor management. You'll review contracts with the vendors who sell to the state.
Do you have anything else? She asked. I'm not sure I can get credit at Harvard by buying paper cups to stock employee lunchrooms. How could I turn that into an independent study project?
What do you mean?
Eddie, if I take too much time off, Harvard will consider it more than just a leave of absence. They will say I abandoned my education. They won't invite me back. But if I get a job with enough responsibility, I can turn it into an independent research project for credit, and it's just an ordinary semester.
Let me see what I could do. Hamilton poked around the site a bit longer. Okay, I think I found some stuff. Let's see what you want to do. The Secretary of State's office has 4 divisions: elections, business services, securities, and dealer services.
Can I choose which one I want?
Not really. There's a hiring process. It's kind of involved. But Secretary Prentice assigned me some oversight duties of the Business Services Division. I can probably call in a few favors.
Business services?
Yes.
What about elections?
Nothing I can do.
Nothing at all?
I guess I could twist a few arms here and there. It might be worth a try. Mei Hua stood up. She sauntered over to the door. Turning to look over her right shoulder, she made sure Hamilton was watching. When she was sure he saw what she was doing, she locked the door and strolled casually back to her seat. Okay. In elections, there's an assistant project manager job with Steve. He kind of owes me a favor or two, Hamilton murmured. Mei Hua leaned forward in her seat. Wait, what am I doing? There's just no way I can get you this job. It needs a college degree. I'll have to run it by apprentice. Not to mention the headaches with human resources. Mei Hua stood up. She went around the desk and stood behind Hamilton. As he continued talking to himself, she began to caress his shoulders. Hamilton turned his head to look at her. No, I can't get you anything in elections. But that gave me an idea.
What?
Watch this, Hamilton said. With that, he clicked into the Business Services Department listings. He turned back to look at Mei Hua, this time with a big grin on his face. Mei Hua crossed her arms and watched. Hamilton sorted through a few items and then typed in some information. Look what I did. This is really clever. I found you a job as an assistant project manager. It's the highest I can get you without a college degree. Technically, it requires a degree, but I think we can waive that requirement owing to your obvious intelligence and abilities. Still, I'm going to have to call Amanda Mercer over at HR, he said. He turned back to Mei Hua for her reaction. While he wasn't quite expecting Mei Hua to realize what a big favor that would be, he was somewhat discouraged by her impassive gaze. Here's the clever part, he continued. I know Sheila Sumter. She hardly ever shows up to work. So, she won't give you much trouble. You'll have free rein. Technically, you'll be her assistant, but you'll be doing the high-level work. You'll be able to tell Harvard how you manage projects on your own. It's a win-win.
What kind of projects?
The ones that make sure data entry systems for new businesses trying to become corporations are effective and user-friendly. Mei Hua forced a smile.
I don't know anything about computers. Are you sure you can't get me the job in elections? I learned so much about democracy at Harvard.
I just can't do that. You're a smart girl. All you have to do is figure out whether the systems are easy to use. Then you'll report back. Mei Hua nodded. And the best part is, you will answer to me. I won't have to justify to Prentice why I hired you.
I understand. Thank you so much.
Hamilton stood up from the chair behind the well-worn desk. He turned to Mei Hua. The big smile on his face vanished instantly when she offered him a handshake.
I can't thank you enough,
she said before turning towards the door. She walked across the room, unlocked the door, and left. From Mei Hua Chang to James Olmsted. Subject, project manager job. Jim.
Hamilton got me that job at the Secretary of State's office. No promising way to touch the elections division. I have been assigned to help design a website for corporation registration.
MHC. From James Olmsted to Mei Hua Chang. Subject, project manager job. Mei Hua, that's fantastic. You're going to do amazing at this job. After all, you have the resources of a giant technology company behind you. Show us what Indiana needs. I'll have our guys design something for you. Turn that in, and it might help you make a lateral move into the election department. In the meantime, we'll try to find you some reasons why the election department needs overhaul. Jim. Article 2, Section 15. Hollywood Studio. 2 years before Election Day. Action! Called the director. The actors gathered in the green screen room began moving about as they had been instructed. As they did so, cameras, some mounted, some carried by cameramen, recorded their actions. After about 30 seconds, the director yelled, "Now!" All of the actors, including Meghan Peters, ducked simultaneously. Meghan was acting out the part of Lenore in the scenes leading up to the final climactic battle in the latest installment of the Raven movies, Raven's Bane. Scattered around the evenly lit green walls of the warehouse-sized studio were piles of simulated debris. When the green screen shots were rendered into the finished movie, the scene would depict Heathrow Airport in London, destroyed in the skirmishing between superheroes and supervillains that would set the scene for Meghan's final triumphant struggle. The simulated rocks that lay in piles here and there were made of plastic foam. They were shockingly light, given how much they resembled real boulders. Some of the actors and crew members delighted in taking pictures holding these props overhead, or taking videos of themselves throwing them at one another. A3 ducked a bit late, the assistant director called out. Meh, fix it in post, the director replied before tasking his underlings to set up the next shot. The studio's decision to hire Ashton Reynolds, Hollywood's maestro of computer-generated special effects, to direct Raven's Bane was quite controversial. Some fans were eager to see the alien worlds, the terrifying monsters, and the death-defying action scenes that he would create for Raven without the limitations of real-world physics. Other fans considered themselves purists. They relished the fact that the grand visual spectacles that were the previous Raven movies were made with practical effects. Rather than relying on computers, those movies were shot on location with costumes, props, and scenery that looked on the soundstage much the way they looked on screen. Rumors swirled as to why the Raven franchise would be given such a radically new look and feel. The most common story was that Reynolds was hired simply because his technological savvy made movie production cheaper. With no complicated pyrotechnics generating the explosions, no need for stuntmen to risk their lives, no expensive and challenging shoots on location, the studio would save tens of millions on production costs, even as it produced a movie that would one-up its comic book movie competition. Some who told that rumor included the detail that Meghan's boyfriend, Jerry Neville, would provide some of the enormous arsenal of computing power necessary to render the special effects onto film. Another rumor had it that the film was going to rely on CGI simply because Neville wanted to keep his girlfriend Meghan close to home, where she could continue her pre-med studies and where he could keep a close eye on her. Some even said that if Meghan were taken out of Los Angeles for shooting, Chirp and other social media companies would shadow ban any advertisements and online discussion of Ravensbane. Then there was the issue of Patrick O'Connor. Nobody from the studio actually told the cast and crew why the steely-eyed personal security agent was on the set. He watched over all aspects of the production of Ravensbane with that unfriendly gaze of his. The production crew was left to whisper among themselves that O'Connor worked for Jerry Neville. "Hollywood is a sex-grooming racket," Neville had allegedly told Meghan in one version of the events. "I'm not sending you there without protection." With O'Connor around, most of the men on set demonstratively looked away from Meghan, especially if she passed by in her form-fitting motion capture suit. Just to be on the safe side, they avoided glancing even at Meghan's body double. One associate producer ignored the rumors. When he struck up a conversation with Meghan that began to get personal, Meghan tried to brush him off. The man was persistent. It took her 5 minutes to shoo him away. When he went out to the parking lot that night after the day's shooting, he was set upon by a pack of goons. Rumor had it that the goons were affiliated with Anti-Ra and acting on the orders of Neville. A new associate producer was hired while the bones of the first man's jaw and eye socket healed. For Meghan herself, shooting Ravensbane was far different than shooting Raven's Flight, the previous film in the series. There would be no jetting halfway around the world to get her to exotic but often uncomfortable locations for filming. It was only a short commute to the set each day. She could even attend her classes by teleconference in the long stretches of downtime between shots. The soundstage on which the movie was recorded was different too. The big sets and brilliant costume designs of her first filmmaking experience were replaced by images generated behind the scenes by computers. Meghan found it a challenge to act out her role opposite characters who just weren't there. Generating the right look of anger and determination was difficult if she couldn't actually see something that resembled the movie monster her character was confronting. Even the props she handled required her to use her imagination. The high-tech remote control that Lenore used to guide her trademark space drone was simply a green box. She would pantomime, pressing the buttons and turning the knobs on the gizmo. The details of the device would be added in post-production. Meghan did appreciate that instead of having to spend hours donning a sweaty rubber costume like the one she wore in Raven's Flight, the costume in Ravensbane was fully computer-generated. Instead of stiff rubber, a sleek lycra suit was all the computer needed to know where to locate the elements of her virtual costume in each frame. The gray skin suit featured black and white reflective markers all over it to make sure the computer knew just how she was moving. For Meghan, the biggest difference in producing Ravensbane was that her contract didn't require her to spend months preparing for the role in the gym and the martial arts studio. The movie's fight scenes, seldom limited by the laws of nature, were mostly choreographed by computer. Those few fights that required a human being to enact were mostly done by a stuntwoman. The muscles that Meghan hadn't built in the gym were added to her arms and shoulders by the computer in post-production. All this computer wizardry had its advantages for the actress. Gone was the frustration she experienced in filming Raven's Flight when a complicated action scene required 12.5 takes because some extra or other didn't quite hit his mark. Gone was waiting around as the set was prepared once again so the whole scene could be shot yet again. Meh, fix it in post. That was what the director had said about the late ducking extra in the day's first shot. It was director speak for, that was close enough, the computers will hide a mistake that small. After completing the shot with the extra who didn't duck on time, Director Reynolds led some crew members around the soundstage, showing them where to set up the suspension rig on which the villain Pallas would fly. A large prop that looked like a giant, featureless green stuffed teddy bear was wheeled out onto the set. Meghan's stunt double would wrestle the prop in this shot. The backroom boys would turn the footage into Lenore's battle against Sishat, the leopard goddess. Meghan glanced occasionally at the goings-on in the soundstage from the chair that Patrick O'Connor had set up for her. Mostly she sat absorbed in her chemistry textbook, oblivious to the chaos that swirled around her. She wasn't interrupted often. Her presence was only needed for a few seconds of the 28-minute fight scene that concluded Raven's Bane, in which the heroine and the supervillain would endlessly punch and kick at each other while flying through a CGI city in the CGI hailstorm. There was one thing that director Reynolds insisted that Meghan get exactly right: the portrayal of Lenore's astonishing courage and fierce independence. Before production started, Meghan consulted the industrial psychologist that the studio had hired. She was asked to divulge what music she found most inspiring and what images made her feel most assertive. Before filming scenes in which Lenore interacted with Raven, she was taken to a special room. There, she was to listen to the inspiring music and contemplate the assertive images. While doing so, she would practice power posing. The psychologist would have her stand tall, her chest out, her hands on her hips, looking as if she were firmly in command of all she surveyed. She was told that standing in this manner would make her glands release more testosterone. Meghan was told that confident body language would produce confident feelings, and that those feelings would translate to the screen. In truth, those sessions didn't make Meghan feel much different at all. Still, they seemed important to the studio. She wondered what the industrial psychologist had said and done to the actor playing Raven. When they were together, he always looked so beaten down, so defeated. His muscular arms, which otherwise would have looked so appetizing, hardly seemed capable of protecting her and providing for her. She found it strange that Neville's soft, weak arms that had held her every night for the last year somehow seemed more capable in comparison. Raven's Bane, she was told, would be a passing of the torch. It was Lenore who would administer to Raven the dressing down he so badly needed for his arrogant thoughtlessness. Without his critical error, the villains would never have known about his secret vulnerability. Now that he had blundered, Lenore would have to fight the enemy alone in the final showdown. Meghan was encouraged to improvise the monologue in which she berated Raven. In the entire production, the only lines Meghan was contractually obligated to memorize were the ones she was to deliver in the supposedly spontaneous on-set interviews, where she would sit in a director's chair and give one interviewer after another the same spiel.
In Raven's Bane, we see Lenore's transformation, how she's grown and evolved through the films. She gets to see just how incredibly strong and powerful she really is. The characters respect her. There's a sense of that from the moment she walks into the room. Even a room filled with powerful people. People realize she's the one they want leading their team. Ultimately, this isn't really even a film about Raven. It's a film about Lenore.
This is Ari Mendelson. I hope you're enjoying Consent. I'd love it if you could show your appreciation for my years of hard work by hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel. But why keep this adventure to ourselves? I wrote Kingmaker because I believe its message of keeping control of our own minds is one that America needs to hear. Young men especially will profit from learning the message that lies at the heart of these novels, that the straightest path to happiness is by improving yourself, one step at a time, rather than attempting to change others. So, share this audiobook far and wide across your favorite social platforms. See the description below for other ways for you to support my work. Thank you so much for your time and attention.